All right, let's move on to the key betting opportunities. And I understand you have two states which you regard as close to a lock, and a couple of roughies into where you see some really good value with the state betting market. So let's start with Pennsylvania. I believe is the first one on the list. Let me just quickly bring this up. So how do you see, well, obviously you've shaded Pennsylvania towards the Democrats. They're paying $1.52. You see that as, reasonable value at the moment?
I do, yeah. I do want to emphasize to the viewers, I wouldn't use the word lock. A wise man did once say, Pete, there's no such thing as a lock, but this would be probably my strongest bet on the board of the swing states that we've covered. I mean, I've covered this in last episode. I covered this in last article. I do think just due to Biden's structural media advantage here, Democrats looking really strong in early voting here in Pennsylvania, vastly outnumbering Republicans, probably strong enough to withstand the Republican onslaught on election day. And again, Biden from the Philadelphia suburbs in Delaware, but he spent his entire career in the Philadelphia media market, and he's from Scranton. I think Biden's home court advantage here is going to be enough to carry him to victory. 1.52, yeah, I think that's a valuable play for your money. I think that's a good bet for Biden.
Well, what do you make of all of the discussion around fracking in Pennsylvania and how that's going to have an effect?
Well, it absolutely could. I mean, certainly you see Trump trying to tar him with that brush, right? You'll see Trump saying, Joe's going to ban fracking, and he brought that up heavily in the debate a little while ago. It's probably not going to be enough, and these are counties, I will say this, counties where fracking is a lifeblood. They're already going to vote Trump anyway. Will that maximize his margin anymore? Probably not. I mean, there hasn't been a huge movement noticeable so far in Pennsylvania polling or Texas polling, another state where oil is the lifeblood of the economy. I think if you'd have noticed that radical shift that would have moved the needle, you would have noticed that in Pennsylvania and Texas polling by now. So far, it hasn't been detectable. So I think in those counties, again, are probably going to break heavily for Trump. I do think Biden will outperform Hillary by a little bit, and that should be enough.
Sure. We've already discussed Florida in detail here, but let's just bring up the market quickly. As you can see, Republicans slight favourites. Do you believe that $1.86 on offer is a bet?
That's probably fair value. Florida, along with Georgia, have been the states that have drifted globally that have moved the most the past week, and that's understandable. You've seen Democrats' early vote lead get eaten away in Florida. I will point out this moved up today because Biden did have two very strong polls from two good polling units today out of Florida. So if you're a Trump backer, this gives you even better price. It was a lot lower yesterday. You're now seeing your screen, Trump's 186. You get a much more valuable price there. So for all you Trump backers out there, if you do believe Donald Trump's going to win the election, we covered this in our last article, I would suggest getting some of your money in on Florida now. You don't know what the early vote's going to be on election night. I think it will lean Democratic, and I think Biden will be up early. If he's not, and Trump just soars to victory in Florida, which could happen, you're going to want some of the money in on Trump now. And this is an excellent way. I know it doesn't pay as much as Trump being the next president, but it is easily possible that he wins Florida and yet falls short of the presidency, doesn't win the White House. So this is probably the best hedging opportunity on the board. If you think Donald Trump's going to win the White House, I'd get some of your money in on Florida.
Sure. And I think
not a lot. This is a close state. I think it's close to fairly priced. But if you think, again, Trump cannot win there's no road back to the White House for Donald Trump without Florida. Right. So I'd say get in on that now.
Yep.
We're in the final 4 or 5 days here before the election day. So this is probably the best value on Trump on Florida you're going to get.
Sure, and I understand the Republicans have withdrawn their funding out of Florida. They've cut all advertising. So is that a sign of Donald Trump claiming victory in Florida and focusing on other states, or how do you read into that?
It could mean two things, right? I mean, it could mean confidence or it could mean desperation. The Trump campaign is running abysmally short on cash. So what they've had to do, they're campaigning in Georgia, Ohio, Iowa. Donald Trump shouldn't be anywhere near Georgia or Ohio in the closing week of an election. If he's defending those states, he's in trouble. nevertheless, they're short on cash, and they've had to shore up those states, the foundation of their map. They've had to shore up their foundation before they can move anywhere. They pulled their spending out of Florida. It could be just sort of a triage, right? Saying we're not going to, we have to hope our lead's big enough in Florida to withstand election day and early voting by Democrats. It could be. I know they would want to be spending money in Florida right now, but it could be that they feel strongest about all those states, about all the states in play. It could be a sign that they feel the strongest about Florida, and they just don't have the money to compete there, and they're hoping they have a big enough lead.
Okay, sure. Let's now take a look at a couple of your long shots. So starting with Alaska.
Yes.
So you may be able to obtain double-figure odds on the Democrats in Alaska. You think that's they're a small chance? That's a value play there.
This is an interesting one if you really are a believer in a Biden landslide where he gets in the neighborhood of where he captures Texas, Georgia, Ohio, and he gets in the neighborhood of 370, 380, 400 electoral votes. And you believe if he's going to win the national popular vote by 12 or more, some polls do show that, he could win Alaska. I mean, it's not that far off. Polling shows probably about a 5 to 6 point deficit for Biden. But if you really do believe some of the polls that show a landslide, yeah, Alaska could be value. You get a little bit of a spread there on your screen, but you could probably get Alaska for 9 or 10 if you want to take a long shot. And that's betting him to win Alaska is equivalent to betting on a Biden landslide. And it's also a bet on the fact that we know less about Alaska politics really in America than we do any other state. It's not polled frequently. Americans just don't really have it, although it does always vote Republican. This year it may not. It's certainly not showing as much of a Republican drift as it usually does. And so for the lack of polling and high quality information coming out of Alaska, you could take a shot there for 10 if you want. And that's another way of betting on a big Biden win.
All right. And I understand your best Republican long shot is Minnesota. So it looks as though you can obtain around the $4 quote on Minnesota here.
Yeah, and this is for all the bettors out there that believe Trump's going to win. If you believe not only will he win, but he'll overperform his polls enough to even perhaps pick off one of the blue states, right? This was only a little bit over Hillary Clinton only won Minnesota by a little over a point. So this would be a place where the only spot on the map where I really can conceive of him taking a state out of the Democratic column would be Minnesota. And this is a stretch. I do want to emphasize Biden's got a huge polling lead here. But conversely, if you believe in not a Trump landslide really, but kind of a red wave that it's going to be, let's say you don't buy into the notion that it's an 8-point race. Maybe you think it's a 2-point race. In that environment, yeah, Trump could win Minnesota. And taking a shot at him at 4 here, not the worst idea in the world if you really are a Trump backer and you believe all the polls, you place really little emphasis on polls and you believe they're wrong, Minnesota's your shot.
Okay, excellent. Moving on to our viewer questions, and thanks again to all the viewers for sending in these questions.
Yes, thank you guys.
A few to get through this week, but the first one's from Edward. How much of an impact on the election will Joe's alleged involvement in his son's China business activities have?
Yeah, this is another story that's been kicking around online for probably a week and a half now. In this environment, probably not much impact. A lot of people thought, is this the October surprise? Is this equivalent to James Comey's famous letter to Congress with about 11 days left before the election? So far, there's no noticeable impact of that in the polling. And for better or worse, I think we're living in an environment with very few undecided voters, and people are people have already made up their minds. If you want to believe this type of story, you're going to believe it. Is it going to actually persuade someone that was voting for Joe Biden to flip their vote? I doubt it. It's just going to provide more of a counter argument for Trump voters to say, what about Hunter Biden's laptop? That's more fuel to the fire, and they probably will say that. If you believe that, you want to believe it. That's kind of the environment we're living in. But I just think we're living in an environment where so much of the electorate, as we've discussed on prior episodes, Pete, this thing's kind of in a straight line with a 7, 8, 9-point national lead, and you just don't see a lot of people changing their minds. For that, we haven't seen it in the polling yet, and I would doubt it's going to make much of an impact.
Okay. Next question is from Dan. I noticed that Trump is double figures to achieve between 240 and 269 on a number of betting websites. This seems value to me. What are your thoughts? So let me just quickly bring up the voting bands market Yeah. So the 240 to 269, as you can see, you can currently get 10.5 on Betfair.
Sure. This is an interesting market. You know, we have other markets like this in our American exchange over here. It's another way of betting. It's kind of like an over/under. You can bet on what you think the margin of victory will be by your candidate, or just bet that he'll get over/under a certain amount. And it's a great hedging opportunity. To Dan's question, yeah, I actually do think that's valuable. If Trump falls just short, which I think he could, let's say he hangs on to Georgia, hangs on to Florida, a couple other states, and he falls just short. Yeah, absolutely. At $12, $11, 240 to 269, that's a good play. To Dan, yeah, I think that's anywhere near that is pretty good value for your money if you believe in a close race and you think Trump will fall just short. Absolutely. You could even look at a couple of brackets around that, right? You could bet 210 to 239 and cover yourself there 3 or 4 different ways to ensure that if it lands anywhere in there, you still make a profit.
Okay, let's just quickly look at the Biden voting bands here as well. If we go back to your map, you had Biden ending up with 306 if everything goes to plan with what you've predicted. So
Sure.
you can see that 300 to 329 is currently paying around $9 on the exchange there. So that might be seen as value to some viewers there. The next question I have is from Rich. Who is the sharp/smart money?
Sorry about that. Go ahead. The sharp smart money. Great question. The professional money, the sharp money around the world is mainly on Joe Biden, and they're pouncing on that because they perceive it to be great value. They believe Biden is underpriced in global markets, and I can see why. Over here in America, you're going to get Donald Trump. He's probably about a 40% probability still to win the election. There's been widespread support for Trump, public money in the betting markets. You're seeing a real divide, Pete, between sharp money and square money, as we say. The professionals around the world, people whose opinions I respect, a lot of academic models, and a lot of professional bettors are backing Biden, and a lot of them are backing a Biden blowout. I don't foresee a blowout, but again, people whose opinions I do respect are forecasting that, and it's mainly on Joe Biden.
Sure. Yeah, the word on the street from a lot of bookmakers is that they can't write a bet for Biden. They're taking 4-1 bets on Donald Trump. So for Biden to get to that price, the $1.50, $1.60 sort of price, it's going to take a heck of a lot of I guess sharp money to bring him into that price.
To bring him into what, Pete? I'm sorry.
To the current price of 150, 160. It'd be if
right.
The betting markets were purely based on recreational punters that are hitting up the bookmakers, then Donald Trump would be favourite. They're taking 4-1 bets on Donald Trump, so it has to be evened out by this by the sharp money coming for Joe.
Absolutely, and you're starting to see that globally. You're starting to see that in the United States as well. Like in the past day, you've seen Trump really start to tail off a little bit for the first time. There's been noticeable movement. The long time question has been like how long can this support for Trump hold up, right? But as you see like more advanced bettors and real heavy money come in, it's starting to drift to one side, exactly as you were talking about.
Sure. Next question from Brett. Election aside, I've read some things about Jamie Harrison and the South Carolina Senate race. Should I be backing Harrison?
That's an interesting Senate race and an interesting question. We haven't talked too much about the Senate on the show, Pete, but that's a whole nother question. You know, will the Democrats recapture the Senate? In recent years, in recent elections in the states, you're seeing a much lower frequency of split ticket voting. Okay, and what I mean by that is Trump's going to carry South Carolina pretty comfortably, right? And so what you would need is a lot of Trump voters to vote for Jamie Harrison. Okay, and they're not going to vote straight ticket down the line Republican. He's going to need some level of support from people that are voting for Donald Trump. In this kind of environment, I just don't see it. He has hung in there a lot closer than anyone thought he would. And Lindsey Graham, the incumbent Republican, he might underperform Trump by a few points, not enough to give Jamie Harrison the win. I can't see it, even in a Democratic Hurricane. I cannot see Jamie Harrison pulling off a win in South Carolina. Maybe Steve Bullock in Montana. That's a Democrat you want to take a look at because that might be a state where Trump wins, where the Democrats could actually win a Senate seat. I still think he's an underdog, but Montana Senate, just because Bullock's a very, very popular governor, he might overperform the ticket enough to get over the finish line. Harrison, I just can't see it.
Okay. Question from Jared. What states traditionally swing late on election day and provide trading opportunities?
What states traditionally swing late? You're going to want to pay attention. See, this year, the answer to that question is very different. You're going to want to pay attention to the states that we talked about earlier in the episode that count their mail-in ballots late. That would likely be Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. Now, that question is a very different question than any other year, Pete. But this year, because of the late influx of mail-in ballots that have to be counted, we could be approaching midnight here in the Eastern time zone, where Trump's got a lead in all three of those Rust Belt states, right? Maybe even Ohio, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, work your way over. Trump could be leading in all three, but there could be millions of Democratic mail-in votes to be counted. So that's the swing. And again, I know his question was traditionally. This year is not a traditional year. So you want to pay attention to that. What I will give you in terms of tradition, Arizona. This is going to be much later in the night because it's on the mountain time zone. Arizona, you do see something of a blue shift. And you saw that in the 2018 Senate race in Arizona, where Maricopa County, the state's largest county, where Phoenix is based, that's just going to be slower to report its votes. And slowly but surely, you're going to probably see a Democratic gain. Okay? Not just through mail-in votes. This is just through, I'm talking election day, in-person voting. You do notice a more of a shift in Arizona into the next day. It could be a couple days in Arizona before you see Biden take the lead. He is favored there. So that's one state you'll keep an eye on. You want to keep an eye on.
Yep, sure. And the final one we have isn't a question as such, but more of a shout out from Shane. He's mentioned that he's enjoyed the coverage, and Tavis has turned him into an armchair US election expert, and I'm impressed you made it through the series without Pete calling Tavis Travis. So there you go. You probably get that a bit.
I got that once or twice in my life, Pete. Yeah, I'm impressed too, by the way, Shane. Thanks for the shout out. Let's give Peter a round of applause. I am impressed that he made it, even though he knows me. He did make it through the entire series without slipping up and calling me that. So
there aren't too many Tavises in Australia. But yeah,
I guess there aren't down here. There aren't too many in the world, really. I'm one of the few people I guess you Google with their first name. But me and Tavis Smiley, I guess.
Fantastic.
I was supposed to be the first famous Tavis, but he beat me to the punch. What can I say?
Yep, there you go. So that's all that we have time for here. But I just want to say thanks again for being part of this series, Tavis. It's been great to catch up with you the last few months and hear your thoughts. To the viewers out there, thanks very much for tuning in once again. And remember to gamble responsibly. If you have any feedback you wish to pass on, then feel free to email me, pete.jones@betfair.com.au, or DM me on Twitter. And we wish everyone all the best and hope that you have a profitable 2020 election.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone out there. First off, to the fans, you guys have been great. Thank you for interacting with us. Thank you, Pete, I hope you enjoyed the series over what's been a marathon and also a sprint in many ways in a 4 to 5 month period. So thank you for that. Thank you to Betfair for providing our platform. And best of luck to all you guys. Just one reminder to the viewers, stay tuned with us on Twitter. We are going to provide our final picks and our final map Monday or Tuesday. So the show is over, but the picks are not. So stay tuned.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, best of luck, guys.
Thank you, guys. Take care, Pete.